You only get one chance. Not someday. Not when you're ready. Not when everything finally lines up the way you imagined. This one. Right now. And the terrifying part is, most people don't even realize when they're using it. They treat time like it's renewable. Like there will always be another version of this moment waiting for them. Another opportunity. Another opening. Another chance to try again later. So they hesitate. They delay. They scroll. They overthink. They wait for certainty that never arrives. But time doesn't wait. It doesn't pause for clarity. It doesn't slow down for confidence to catch up. It moves forward whether you participate in it or not. And every moment you spend distracted, every decision you postpone, every action you avoid, isn't just a delay. It's a choice. A quiet one. A subtle one. But still a choice that shapes your direction. Because this one chance isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with warnings or countdowns. It hides inside ordinary moments. The conversations you ignore. The ideas you dismiss. The habits you repeat without thinking. The opportunities you almost take, but don't. That's where life actually happens. Not in grand, cinematic turning points, but in small, overlooked decisions that accumulate over time. And while most people are waiting for the right time, the truth is, the right time is already passing them by. Not loudly, not visibly, but consistently. So the real question isn't whether you'll get another chance. It's whether you'll recognize the one you already have before it slips away unnoticed. Because you don't need perfect conditions to begin. You don't need total clarity to move. You don't need permission to act. All you have is this moment. Unpolished, uncertain, incomplete. And that's exactly what makes it real. This is the only chance that matters. Because it's the only one you actually have control over. Not the past, not the future. Just this. Right now, there's a quiet assumption controlling your life. A belief so subtle, you rarely question it. That you have time. Time to fix things. Time to improve. Time to become the person you keep promising yourself you'll be. It's the invisible comfort that lets you delay decisions, postpone effort, and negotiate with your own potential. You tell yourself, I'll start later. I'll take it seriously soon. I just need the right moment. But what if that's wrong? What if the certainty you're waiting for never arrives? What if clarity only shows up after action, not before it? What if the version of you you're trying to become is only accessible through the moments you're currently avoiding? Because time doesn't present itself as something urgent. It doesn't warn you when it's slipping away. It feels ordinary, familiar, repetitive, which is exactly why it's so easy to overlook. What if this moment isn't one of many, but the only version of itself that will ever exist? Not replaceable, not repeatable, not something you can recreate with the same conditions, the same mindset, the same alignment of circumstances. Every second passes once and never returns in the same form again. No rewinds, no retries, no second takes, just irreversible progression disguised as normal life. And because it feels normal, you assume it carries no consequence. But in reality, every moment is a fork in the path, a silent decision point, a place where your actions either reinforce who you are or slowly reshape who you become. Not through one dramatic shift, but through countless small ones you barely notice. The choice to act or delay, to focus or drift, to engage or escape. Each one compounds. Each one accumulates. Each one moves you, whether you acknowledge it or not. So the life you end up living isn't built in a single defining moment. It's built in the ordinary ones you keep overlooking. That's why this idea is so critical to understand. You are not standing in a loop of endless chances. You are moving through a sequence of irreversible instants, each one unique, each one unrepeatable. And this one, the one you are in right now, will never come back in the same way again. Just one chance, disguised as ordinary life. Chapter 1. The dangerous comfort of delay. You don't waste your chance all at once. You don't wake up one day and suddenly lose everything in a single decision. It happens quietly, gradually, almost invisibly. You trade it slowly, piece by piece, for comfort, for distraction, for the illusion that there's always tomorrow waiting in reserve. Each time you choose ease over effort, each time you avoid discomfort, each time you postpone what you know needs to be done, you are making a trade. Not a dramatic one, not a noticeable one, but a real one nonetheless. Because delay always feels harmless in the moment. It comes wrapped in reasoning that sounds logical, responsible, even justified. You tell yourself, I'll start later. I just need more time. I'm not ready yet. And in isolation, none of these thoughts seem dangerous. They feel like preparation, like patience, like timing things correctly. But over time, they become something else entirely. A pattern, a habit, a reflex that activates whenever progress requires discomfort. And the most deceptive part is this. Later never feels different from now. When later arrives, it doesn't arrive with new energy. It doesn't arrive with newfound clarity. It doesn't arrive carrying motivation you didn't have before. It feels exactly the same. The same hesitation, the same uncertainty, the same resistance to begin. So you do what you've always done. You delay again, and again, and again. Each repetition feels small, insignificant, easy to justify. But together, they form something powerful. A quiet drift away from action. A slow erosion of momentum. Until time starts to blur. Weeks pass without meaningful change. Months pass with intentions unfulfilled. Years pass with the same internal promises, never fully acted upon. And what was once a single opportunity, a clear moment to begin, dissolves into a lifetime of hesitation. Not because you were incapable, not because you lacked potential, but because the cost of starting always felt slightly heavier than the comfort of waiting. And so the trade continues, unnoticed, until there is nothing meaningful left to trade. Chapter 2. You're not preparing. You're postponing. It feels productive, doesn't it? Waiting, refining, thinking things through, telling yourself that you're being responsible by not rushing in. Waiting until you're more confident, more skilled, more certain. It feels like progress. It sounds like discipline. It even looks like wisdom from the outside. But most of the time, you're not preparing. You're postponing. Postponing the discomfort of being a beginner. Postponing the vulnerability of not having all the answers. Postponing the possibility of failing in front of yourself or others. Because action exposes what preparation hides. It reveals gaps. It tests assumptions. It forces reality to replace imagination. And that's uncomfortable. So instead of stepping into that discomfort, you stay in a safer place. A place where everything is theoretical, controlled, predictable. You convince yourself that more time will make things easier. That more thinking will reduce mistakes. That more readiness will eliminate uncertainty. But readiness is often a moving target. The more you chase it, the further it seems to move. Because the truth is, you never feel completely ready to begin something that matters. There is always another skill to learn, another detail to refine, another reason to wait just a little longer. And if you accept that, you'll realize something important. Waiting is not neutral. It is not passive. It has a direction. It moves you away from experience, away from feedback, away from the very thing that creates improvement. You think you need clarity before you begin. A full picture, a clear path, a guaranteed outcome. But clarity doesn't come before action. It comes because of it. You don't think your way into certainty. You act your way into understanding. Each step reveals something new. Each attempt sharpens your perception. Each mistake corrects what thinking alone could not. And without those steps, without those attempts, without those mistakes, you remain exactly where you are. Not because you lack potential, but because you never gave it a chance to express itself through action. So every second you spend waiting, every moment you spend preparing instead of engaging, is not just time passing. It's time being spent in one direction only. Away from growth, away from feedback, away from momentum. And while it feels like you are holding on to your chance, in reality, you are watching it move further out of reach. Quietly, consistently, without resistance, slipping away one unacted moment at a time. Chapter 3. The moment that defines you. Your life is not defined by years. It's defined by moments. Not the big, dramatic milestones people tend to remember, but the small, ordinary, often invisible moments that rarely get noticed. Moments where nothing external seems significant is happening. Yet internally, everything is at stake. Moments where you had a choice, and no one else could make it for you. And in those moments, you either stepped forward or stayed where you were. No audience, no applause, no immediate consequences that feel obvious in the moment. Just a quiet decision. Send the message or don't. Start the project or delay it. Speak up or stay silent. Take the step or hold yourself back. Each option feels small, almost insignificant, easy to overlook. Because nothing dramatic happens right away. There is no instant reward, no instant penalty, So it feels like the choice doesn't really matter. But that's where perception becomes misleading. Because these decisions don't exist in isolation. They don't disappear after they're made. They don't reset when the moment passes. They accumulate. Each one adds to something larger. Each one reinforces a direction. Each one strengthens a pattern of behavior that becomes increasingly familiar over time. And the more a pattern is repeated, the more automatic it becomes. So what begins as a single hesitation becomes a tendency. What begins as one delay becomes a habit of waiting. What begins as one avoided action becomes a default response to discomfort. And without realizing it, you start to operate from those patterns. Not because you consciously chose them every time, but because you allowed them to form through repetition. This is how a life is quietly shaped, not in one defining event, but in thousands of small, seemingly insignificant decisions that guide your trajectory over time. You don't suddenly arrive at a version of yourself one day. You grow into it gradually, moment by moment, choice by choice. And then, at some point you pause. You look around at your circumstances, your habits, your outcomes, and you realize something subtle but powerful. You are living inside the accumulation of your past decisions. Not because of one big moment, but because of countless small ones, where you either used your chance or let it pass without acting on it. Chapter 4. Why most people miss their chance. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they don't want more out of life. It's not even because they lack ability or potential. Most people miss their chance for a much quieter reason. They're distracted, pulled in 100 directions at once. Their attention constantly divided between inputs that never stop coming. Notifications, feeds, updates, entertainment, noise, endless scrolling, endless consumption, endless exposure to things that demand attention but give little in return. Over time, this doesn't just fill their time. It fragments their mind. Their focus becomes scattered. Their awareness becomes diluted. Their ability to stay present in a single moment weakens. And presence is everything. Because when you're not fully present, you're not fully aware of what's actually in front of you. You overlook subtle opportunities. You dismiss situations that could have led somewhere meaningful. You fail to notice the moments that require a decision because your attention is elsewhere. Opportunity rarely arrives with clarity. It doesn't announce itself loudly or demand immediate recognition. It often appears ordinary, unremarkable, easy to ignore. And if your mind is elsewhere, you won't see it. Not because it wasn't there, but because you weren't there to perceive it. This is how chances are missed. Not through a single failure of intention, but through a lack of attention. When your awareness is divided, your perception becomes incomplete. And when your perception is incomplete, your decisions are made without full context. So you move through life half-aware, partially engaged, never fully anchored in the moment you're actually in. And in that state, it's easy to believe that you'll become more focused later, that at some point in the future, you'll lock in. That clarity and discipline will arrive when conditions are better, when distractions are fewer, when life feels more structured. But that future version of focus doesn't appear on its own. It's built through repeated moments of presence, practiced now, not postponed. Because someday is not a destination that arrives with a signal. It doesn't knock. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't announce itself with a clear transition from distraction to discipline. It just blends in with the rest of your days. One moment flows into the next, and the opportunities within those moments pass just as quietly. No warning, no interruption, no second chance to notice what was already there. And so, while you're waiting to become more focused, while you're waiting to gain control, while you're waiting for the right time to start paying attention, life continues moving forward without pause. And the moments you weren't fully present for, the ones you didn't fully engage with, they don't come back. They pass quietly, like every other moment you didn't realize mattered until it was already gone. Chapter 5. The truth you can't escape. Here's the truth most people avoid. You are already using your one chance. Not in some distant future. Not when circumstances improve. Not when life finally feels aligned and under control. Right now, in this moment, and every moment you've already moved through. It's in how you spend your time, in what you choose to engage with, and what you ignore, in what you tolerate without questioning, in what you repeatedly avoid because it feels uncomfortable. Every action you take, every delay you justify, every excuse you accept as valid, is actively shaping the outcome of your life. Not someday, not eventually, Now, there is no neutral position, no true pause where nothing is being decided, no state where your life is unaffected by your behavior. Even inaction is a direction. You are either moving forward or drifting further away from the life you imagine for yourself. Forward motion doesn't always feel dramatic. It doesn't always come with visible progress or immediate results. Sometimes it's subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it compounds in the right direction. It builds structure. It creates momentum. It strengthens your ability to act again and again. Drifting, on the other hand, is just as subtle, but in the opposite direction. It doesn't feel like failure in the moment. It feels like waiting, like pausing, like keeping your options open. But over time, that pattern accumulates too. Small delays become repeated delays. Repeated delays become habits. Habits become identity. And without realizing it, you begin to drift away from the standards you once had, away from the goals you once cared about, away from the person you intended to become. Not through one major collapse, but through a consistent lack of decisive action. And the cost of that drift is not always obvious at first. It doesn't announce itself immediately. It reveals itself slowly, over time, through outcomes that feel disconnected from intention. A sense of something missing. A feeling that things could have been different. A quiet awareness that you've ended up somewhere you didn't consciously choose. A life that feels unfulfilled because it was never fully directed. Unexplained because the causes were small, repeated, and easy to overlook. Unfinished because the effort required to complete what was started was repeatedly postponed. And that is the reality most people only recognize too late. Not because they never had a chance, but because they were already living it, moment by moment, without fully realizing the weight of each decision they were making. Chapter 6. The shift from passive to deliberate. Everything changes when you stop treating time like it's guaranteed. When you stop assuming there will always be another chance waiting in the background. Because that assumption is what allows hesitation to exist in the first place. It creates a sense of safety around delay. A quiet belief that nothing is truly at risk if you don't act right now. But once that belief weakens, your entire relationship with time begins to shift. You become sharper, not in a forced or intense way, but in a natural, heightened awareness of what actually deserves your attention. More intentional, more conscious of where your energy is going and why. More aware of what matters and what doesn't. Things that once felt important start to lose their weight. Distractions become easier to recognize for what they are, and your tolerance for wasted time begins to decrease. You stop overthinking small decisions, not because you've become careless, but because you realize that excessive thinking often replaces necessary action. Instead of analyzing every possibility endlessly, you begin to act, observe, adjust, and move forward. You stop waiting for perfect conditions, because you start to understand that perfect conditions are not a prerequisite for progress. They are often a product of progress itself. Momentum doesn't appear before movement. It is created by movement. So instead of waiting for everything to align, you begin to work with what is already available to you. Imperfect circumstances, incomplete information, limited certainty, and yet, still enough to begin. Not because you've suddenly become fearless, but because your perspective has changed. Fear is still present. Uncertainty is still there. Doubt may still arise, but they no longer have the same authority over your actions. Because you've come to understand something fundamental. This is it, not in a dramatic or overwhelming sense, but in a clear, grounded recognition that this moment is the only one you are actually inside of. There is no other version of this exact instant waiting to replace it. No identical duplicate that will give you a second opportunity under the same conditions. This is your window, your opportunity, your one chance unfolding in real time. And once that understanding settles in, your behavior naturally begins to align with it. You act with more awareness. You decide with more clarity. You move with more purpose. Not because everything becomes easy, but because everything becomes meaningful. And in that shift, from passive waiting to deliberate action, you stop living as someone who assumes time is abundant, and start living as someone who understands it is finite, immediate, and already in motion. Chapter 7. What using your chance actually looks like. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It doesn't resemble the kind of transformation people expect to see in stories or films. Using your chance doesn't announce itself with intensity or spectacle. It doesn't require recognition. It doesn't need validation. Instead, it lives in quiet moments. Moments where no one is watching. No one is applauding. No one is evaluating your effort. It looks like discipline, expressed consistently when there is no external pressure to act. Doing the work when it would be easier not to. Continuing when progress feels slow or invisible. Staying committed when motivation fades. It's choosing growth over comfort repeatedly, not as a one-time decision, but as a pattern of behavior. Because growth often asks for something comfort resists. Discomfort, effort, patience, repetition, and each time you choose growth in those moments, you reinforce a direction, a standard, an internal expectation of who you are becoming. Using your chance also means being willing to act despite discomfort, saying what needs to be said, even when it feels awkward or uncertain, initiating what needs to be initiated, even when hesitation is present, facing situations instead of avoiding them, because avoidance only delays the inevitable. It's not about eliminating fear. It's about not allowing fear to dictate your decisions. At its core, it's consistency, not bursts of effort followed by long periods of inactivity, but steady, repeatable action over time. Small actions, repeated daily. Tiny decisions, aligned with a clear direction. These actions may seem insignificant in isolation. They may not produce immediate visible results, but over time, they accumulate. They compound. They begin to define the trajectory of your life. And the key difference is intentionality. You're no longer moving randomly, reacting to impulses or moods. You're making decisions with awareness of where they lead. Each choice becomes a signal, a reinforcement of identity, a step toward a specific outcome. So instead of waiting for the perfect conditions to act, you begin to work within the conditions that already exist, showing up again and again, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's repetitive, even when it's difficult to see immediate progress. Because the standard is no longer based on how you feel in the moment. You've stopped asking, "Do I feel like it?" Because that question often leads to inconsistency. And instead, you've started asking something more grounded, more reliable. Does this move me forward? That question shifts your focus from emotion to direction, from comfort to consequence, from impulse to intention. And when that becomes your default way of thinking, your actions begin to align with your long-term vision, rather than your short-term resistance. That is what using your chance actually looks like. Not perfection, not constant excitement, not effortless execution, but deliberate action, guided by clarity, supported by discipline, and repeated over time with unwavering consistency. You only get one chance. Not one chance to be perfect, not one chance to get everything right, but one chance to try, one chance to act, one chance to step forward instead of standing still, one chance to engage with life as it unfolds, rather than observing it from a distance while waiting for conditions to improve. And this distinction matters, because perfection was never the requirement. Clarity was never guaranteed in advance. Certainty was never meant to arrive before movement. The expectation that you must be fully ready before you begin is what keeps so many people from ever starting at all. It creates a standard that feels reasonable, but is rarely achievable in practice. In reality, progress begins in uncertainty. Action begins without complete information. Growth begins in the middle of discomfort, not outside of it. So this one chance is not defined by flawless execution, but by participation, by willingness, by engagement, by the decision to act despite incomplete understanding. Because every moment you delay waiting for the right conditions is still part of that same chance being used. There is no separate moment reserved for a perfect restart. No hidden version of life where you can step in later without consequence. It's continuous, uninterrupted, unrepeatable, and the opportunity you have is not something waiting ahead of you. It's something unfolding as you move through time. Right now, you are inside it, not approaching it, not preparing for it, already within it. Every choice you make in this moment contributes to how that chance is being used. Every action adds direction. Every delay adds distance from intention. And over time, these small moments form the larger picture of your life. So the question is not whether you will get a chance someday. The question is whether you recognize the one you are already in. Because this is not a rehearsal. There are no previews, no second takes, no resets that preserve the exact conditions of now. This is the real thing, unfolding in real time. irreplaceable in its exact form, and already in progress. And that chance is happening right now. So don't wait for a sign. Don't wait for the perfect moment. This is the moment. Start, move, speak, act. Because the worst mistake isn't failure. It's realizing too late that you had your chance and you let it pass. Like, share, and subscribe to the Cypher Phantom.